you're just a guy from New York City. I mean, you started off as a kid in the public schools of New York City. Let's see, what do I have here? PS 164. I went to PS 40, so I'm like a big New York public schools guy.
Right.
But that's where you started this, huh? Playing. That's where the musical thing began.
I can tell you exactly. It was in the 4th grade. We were sitting in the auditorium waiting for the school buses to come. It was a rainy day, so it was like maybe that's why everybody was there. And so they had like a little talent show. And this kid comes up and he sings a song called "They Tried to Tell Us We're Too Young." And everyone in the audience is just, going wild. And that kid was Art Garfunkel, And I said, that's interesting. I wonder if I can sing, So, I checked it out to see if I could sing. So that's when it began. And my father was...
Your dad was in music, right?
Was a musician. Yeah, and the other big moment that's so early on is I was sitting in my room, playing something, I don't know what. Might have been some baseball card game. Maybe I was making a set of baseball cards or something. And he was on his way out to work, and he was wearing a tuxedo and
because he was a band. He was in a band.
Right. He was a band leader, and he played in bands, and so he was going out to do a club date. He was a bass player, and he stuck his head in the room and he said, "Oh, you have a nice voice, Paul." Which these casual things have a big impact. So that's when I started, but I wasn't interested in the music that I was hearing. But again, I can remember this how it began. I was always a big Yankees fan, a big baseball fan, and I used to write out the score. Score the games. Write out the lineups, and then you can score it, whether it's a single, a fly ball, to left field, etc. So to listen to the Yankee games, it was on a station. It was on 1010 Wins, which is still there. It's an all news station, right? But before the Yankee games came on, they had a show called Make Believe Ballroom. I think that's what was the name. Anyway, it was a pop music show. And they'd play, whatever the pop music was that was popular, of the day, Perry Como or Doris Day or there was a singer named Vaughn Monroe that I particularly loathed, But I didn't pay any attention to it at all. I just had it on early because I didn't want to miss the first pitch. So it also gave me time to fill up the lineups, And as I'm filling it out, the disc jockey says, "I got this record in this morning, and I have to say this is the worst song that I've ever heard. And if this record is a hit, I will eat my hat." And he plays a record called G by the Crows, and it's an early R&B record. You could call it doo-wop. I don't think they called it doo-wop, but essentially that's what it was. R&B, doo-wop, something like that. And I'm thinking as I'm writing in, Rizzuto, Berra, etc., I'm thinking that's the first thing I've heard on that show that I liked,
How old were you then?
12, And then in that fall, Alan Freed came on and started to play rock and roll. What became rock and roll, and that's when I started to get interested in it. And
so your dad didn't say, "Hey, I'm a musician. I'd love you to get into music." It was never like that.
No, he didn't, but he bought a guitar for me for my 13th birthday. And he showed me the chords that you play, which worked for 90% of the songs in the 50s. He showed me how to play those chords. And, he encouraged me to play. But he didn't want me to be a professional musician. No, he just said, do this, learn this, you could do this, and you could work your way through college with this, and you don't have to be a waiter. You could, just, learn the songs and you'll be okay. But by the time I had decided, which was probably like somewhere like a year into listening, that's exactly what I wanted to be, was what I was listening to on the radio. By the time I decided that, I didn't tell anybody. It wasn't like you could say, I'd like to be a rock and roll singer. There was no profession. There was, you couldn't be that. Now you can go to school and.
So you're 13, and you're still friendly with Art Garfunkel.
That's sort of when we became friends. Well, I didn't know him in that fourth grade story. I didn't know him. I mean, I didn't really get to know him until the 6th grade. And in the 7th grade, we began to sing together. Mm-hmm. We were the only two kids who were interested in singing, in the neighborhood. And he was like a famous singer. He was that good.
Famous in the neighborhood?
Yeah. Uh-huh. He was famous.
Uh-huh. And did you guys start to play gigs? Did you start entertaining around? Or?
Oh, no. We weren't up to that at all. First we joined up with 3 other kids, 2 girls, 2 sisters. The Pellegrini sisters, Angel and Ida, and Johnny Brennan, who was like a tenor, and we made a group, and we were imitating popular songs, and then we never could get the rehearsals right because everybody always had to go to some place after school or do something. So that group fell apart, and Artie and I started to sing together, just as a duo. That's how it started. And
by the time you're 16, you're recording stuff.
Well, we were
Tom and Jerry.
We made a record, a professional record. But we were recording on home tape recorder. I think I had I bought a tape recorder. How did I do that? I think I sold my baseball card collection.
That's a big investment right there. That's a big decision. That's like a career decision right there.
It was $220 to buy this. And it was oh man, I was excited. So we would sing, and then we heard the Everly Brothers, and that gave us a model. We were huge fans of the Everly Brothers, and we would listen to their singing, and we learned how to sing in thirds, or with those kind of intervals that the Everlys sing in, and we learned their songs. And but before that, that would be about age 15. But before that, like when we were 13 or 14, I wrote a song. We wrote a song together. It was called "The Girl for Me," and it was a hit in the sense that we'd sing it at on a street corner, and people would listen to it, and then people would ask us to sing it at the talent show. Then we heard that there were kids in another neighborhood who was singing the song. So,
is that right? So they actually ripped the song off, huh?
Yeah, I didn't think of it that way, but I guess that's the I guess that's the truth. Yeah, but anyway, that was our first song, and then we would go around to like little record companies that were in Midtown Manhattan. We'd take the subway in from Queens, and we'd go and we'd knock on the door, and you could just go in and play and audition, or I would write letters to record companies, saying, We write we write songs, and would you be interested in listening? I really didn't even. I just did it just because they would write back. I'd get an envelope, that had Ace Records on it, and I'd be really excited with a Texas postmark and.
This pilgrimage to these houses downtown, I guess, Carole King and all these folks were making those kinds of pilgrimage, huh?
Probably, yeah. Yeah, probably similar. But I mean, by the time, she made a record when she was in high school too. Artie and I had made this record when we were in high school. And I remember, like, I played baseball for the high school baseball team, and I missed a practice because we were doing a talent show, and the coach said to me, "Hey, look, you're going to have to make a decision. Which is more important here? Either you're going to play ball or you're going to waste your time on a talent show."
Uh-huh.
And like for me, it was, I didn't want to give up either one, But I'd
so did he kick you off the team?
No, he didn't kick me off the team. No, I was a leadoff batter. He wasn't going to kick me off the team, but he did. Tried not to do any conflicting talent show gigs when there was a game or a practice.
But Tom and Jerry became like.
Well, that was a hit.
A hit, yeah.
That song was a hit. It was called "Hey Schoolgirl,"
yeah.
And the label, which was called Big Records, they gave us the name Tom and Jerry. You certainly couldn't use at that point the name Simon and Garfunkel,
or Artie and Paul.
I guess I guess you could use Artie and I guess you could have used that, But anyway, he gave us that name like the cartoon. So we made this record, and they played the record on Dick Clark's American Bandstand, and everyone voted. I'll give it a 95. I'll give it a 95, and it became a hit. Then we came down here to Philadelphia, to come on Dick Clark's American Bandstand. We were 16. It was in November.
What was that like?
Oh, first of all, it was like a big trip. Was that the fact that we were getting on a train and going to Philadelphia was already an adventure.
Uh-huh.
And then we get on the show, and we shared a dressing room with Jerry Lee Lewis.
Oh my!
Yeah, who really did. His nickname is the Killer,
mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what he looked like. He came in there. He was combing his hair in a certain way. I said, "Whoa." This guy is definitely not from our neighborhood,
And what were you guys dressed in? Do you remember?
Yeah, we had red blazers, black slacks, and white bucks.
Uh-huh.
that was our I think black bow ties.
So you plowed the proceeds of your record into these outfits and went to
no. Our parents bought the outfits, and we made, and the record sold enough that we made a couple of $1,000, enough money that I could buy my first car.
Did you know at that moment that this is what you were going to do? Because you went off to college after that.
Yeah, no, we didn't.
You both did.
Yeah, no, we didn't think that this would be something that we would do. All we wanted to do was have a song that got played on the radio. It never, the idea that we would actually go on American Bandstand was beyond what we possibly could have hoped for.
And everybody was watching American Bandstand.
Yeah, we were famous. In our school, we were
big deal.
Yeah, we were.
And did you play? Deal. Were you performing then around the neighborhood, around the school, around the?
Well, I guess a little bit. Yeah. I remember once we got one of the shows. We got booked. We got booked at in Hartford, and we played this theater called the Hartford State Theater, and it was really. And we were on a bill with a bunch of other rock and roll acts, Laverne Baker, and I can't remember the others. Anyway, it was something like playing the Apollo in New York. The audience was, I'd say, 90% black. And they'd introduce us and they'd say, "Ladies and gentlemen, Tom and Jerry," and people would go, "Yay!" and then silence. They'd see we come up to the mic, and just silence.
Did you get them going again?
No, we never. Of course not. Get them going. We didn't know anything, but they were going to pay us. I think they were paying us like $600 for a weekend or something.
That's a lot of dough back in the day, late 50s.
A lot, really a lot. But we were staying at some hotel in Hartford, and we were walking back to the room, and some guy was in the room. I guess he was in the room with a girl, and he said, "Hey, what do you do? What's that guitar? What do you do?" We said, "Oh, we play. We're gonna play at the Hartford State Theater." And he said, "Really? I'll give you $20 if you play a song for us." And we said, "Really?" He said, "Yeah." And we said, "Okay." We played for the $20. So we were getting paid $600.
Set the environment for him. There, is that what you did?
It was like the difference between that they were paying us $600 for the week, and this guy was going to pay us $20. Was like it was might as well have been a babysitting job.
And then but then you split up to go to school. Is that what happened?
Yeah, we had one hit. Then we put out a second record. It wasn't a hit. I think they might even put out a third record. And then we graduated, and we went to we went off to college.
I have to tell you, someone along the way put out a Tom and Jerry album. Maybe after you became famous as Simon and Garfunkel. You're aware of this?
Yeah, I've seen it. Yeah, but about half of those songs are not us.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah,
because
or else it's the. What happened after is that when I was in college, I used to do demos. And that's how I met Carole King.
Mm-hmm.
Demos meaning that songwriters would write a song for a specific artist, and they would book me, and I would sing the song that they wrote for that artist, kind of in a voice that was aimed at whoever it was. We want Frankie Avalon to record this.
So this was to pitch Frankie Avalon on doing the song.
On doing it. So we would do the demo, and I would play the guitar, and they usually had professional musicians, and I'd learn the song, and that's sort of how I made money when I was in college. But of course, I was also Artie wasn't doing that.
You guys he went to Columbia,
He went to
right?
Columbia. I went to Queens College.
And you were studying, he was studying math?
Well, he started out studying architecture, and then he switched to math, and I studied, as I said, I studied English literature.
Mm-hmm. So,
but, doing this on a, 2 or 3 times a week. First of all, it was it paid. I think it paid like $50 to do a demo. So if you did 3 demos a week, you would pay $150. You could buy gas for your car, and you could go out, and you could buy your clothes, and it was pretty good. But also, I was recording all the time, so I learned about recording techniques. How to use a mic, how to overdub and sing in harmony with yourself, how to play and make tracks, and basically that was my training in being a recording artist.
So you went to Queens College,
mm-hmm.
and your music career. So you did these sessions. What were you thinking then? Did you think, I'm just trying to get at this because I'm trying to figure out how you become who you are? You know what I mean?
Well, a lot of it is luck. I was thinking about music, and then I met Carole King, and her story, it was very similar to mine, except she didn't have a hit, but she had learned the same thing in the studios, and then we started to do demos together, and we would do like Carole would play drums and piano and sing, and I would play guitar and bass. So we could make a whole record, and between the two of us, just overdubbing. And then she met Jerry Goffin, who was also at Queens College, and they quit and they got married, and the rest, as they say, it's history. And but I and they.
Did you see that show, by the way, on Broadway? Beautiful, the show about her.
No, I didn't, but I heard it's really good.
It really was. It's really, really good.
And it's a hit all over the place. I was in London recently, and I saw they had a version of it.
But a lot of it is that scene that you were talking about, at these recording companies and all these young players just trying to make it.
Yeah, they were the. There was a company called Alden Music, and it was in. There were two big buildings in New York that had record companies and publishers. One was the Brill Building, which is sort of famous,
right?
And where that little record company that I was on, Big Records, where they were in that, and then there was this other building, 1650 Broadway, that had newer publishers and kind of hipper. The Brill Building, that was Hill and Range, which was country music, and Johnny Marks. He wrote Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. He was in that building, And but anyways, she and Jerry got signed to this company that had a lot of young talent. Neil Sedaka, Cynthia Mann and Weil, and anyway, they were in that world, but I wasn't. I was still.
Did you know Carole? Did you see in her the possibility that she could be something special down the line?
No.
Would she say the same about you? Probably, huh?
Yeah, probably she would. Yeah, I don't think either one of us thought that.
I mean, you guys are like two of the big figures in American music in the last 60 years.
Yeah, it's kind of hilarious. That's what I mean. It's like, once you say that, in sort of the last 60 years, well, okay, so let's say it was 50 years instead of 60, and that's a big period of time, 50 years.
Yeah.
And yet, it goes fast.
So advance the story for me, because where I came into the story as a kid was Sounds of Silence and the way you guys sort of burst on the scene. And
the Sound of Silence. What happened was Artie and I went through our phase where we imitated the Everly Brothers. Had this little hit, "Hey Schoolgirl," broke up, went away to college. I lost interest in rock and roll. In the middle 50s, there was something fascinating about it to me, and actually, it still is. It's still my favorite period of popular music is 1954 to 56, and then as the music became much more mainstream, as it went from being, like what they used to call it, race records, or country and western, hillbilly, once that all came together, with the doo-wop groups on the corners, and Ray Charles and Johnny Cash and Elvis Presley, all these disparate voices from the different elements of American culture, and you put it all together and you called it rock and roll. Well, that was... I don't know. I forgot what I was talking about.
But you went.
What was I actually talking about?
You were talking about the Sounds of
Silence.
Sounds.
How did it happen?
Yeah.
So as the 50s, got towards the late 50s, it got more commercialized and became much, much less interesting. And I mean, also you had American Bandstand, and so it became, more corporate.
Mm-hmm.
And they started to package, kids who were good looking and sell records that way. It wasn't the way it was sort of naturally, which was almost like an American kind of folk music.
Right.
So I lost my interest in rock and roll as it became stupider, and I became interested in folk music, the Weavers and Joan Baez and then Bob Dylan.
Dylan came along, yeah.
And I switched playing electric guitar and got an acoustic guitar. And so I started to write, in that style. And now I'd be in my early 20s, but so somewhere around the age of 22, I think, really almost out of nowhere, I wrote The Sound of Silence. And that was like a big jump over like the 3 or 4 or 5 songs that I'd written that were like that. That was that style. And I mean, I still find it really quite extraordinary that I wrote this song when I was 22 years old. And I thought at the time, this song is much better than what I'd written. And I think it's like, this has happened to me several times in my career that I can remember, where you feel like, where you feel like you're just a conduit and a song comes through you. And it's quite an extraordinary feeling. It's like, and I'm sure you've heard it described many times and probably know the feeling, where something just sort of writes itself,
yeah.
and it's there. Well, that was the first one that happened like that, and I know that's the first time that ever happened, and I noticed it, but I didn't think anything of it because you don't think anything of anything when you're
22 years old.
Yeah, everything seems like, well, that's just the way it is, and I used to go back and forth to England because I had made it, one summer I went to, the first time I went to Europe, I met some English kids and they said, oh, come and stay with us. And so I'd go over and I had a girlfriend in England, and I'd go and I'd sing in these clubs, these little folk clubs in England. And anyway, we made our record, The Sound of Silence. It was on this album, Wednesday morning, 3 a.m., and the record came out, and it was a flop. And a year later, the guy who was our producer, his name is Tom Wilson, after the success of Mr. Tambourine Man, the Byrds, whoops, to turn my phone off.
This is
Ali. This is my my ringtone. It's Ali Farka Touré, guitarist from Mali.
Nice.
Anyway, so a year later, they overdubbed electric instruments on top of our acoustic version. Well, I was living in England. I wasn't even in the studio when they did it. And let's see why they did that. Oh, they did it because a station in Boston was playing the acoustic version, and a station in Jacksonville, Florida was also playing it, and they were starting to get requests for this song. And so they decided to make it folk rock, which had was now
right.
had now become a genre.
Right.
And so they overdubbed drums and a electric 12-string guitar, and the song became a #1 record.